My life is somewhat organized chaos my chin has a wound from when Tank bit me because Dr. Will rectally examined him. But, anyways, as time went on, and I realized that the immensity of facing life as a paraplegic with two young sons and a stalker, I began to weigh my choices. Stick with the horse I know, even though it was a violent renegade, or jump on an untried colt that might be even worse. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer was the thought that kept running through my head. My compassionate lecture I got from my nurse friends that day at the Glenrose was rooted in their knowledge that I was going back into a very dangerous setting and that I was naively unprepared for how immensely vulnerable I would be. My son Jason was almost 15 and Maddie was 13 when a racehorse I was riding on the second day of the 1996 summer race meet in Grand Prairie, Alberta, bolted, clipped heels, broke its leg, and somersaulted on me, crushing my torso. For all of their lives, my sons and I had been a team. Sandy was at a different location that the boys and me much of the time for all those years. Different location than the boys and me much of the time for all those years. Between us, we ran racehorses at various tracks and managed to keep up the farm. We shared the tasks, which meant being wherever we were most needed at the time. Sometimes the boys and I would be at the farm while Sandy was at the track, and vice versa. It was a great arrangement business-wise, and we did well. Sandy picked me up from the Glenrose and brought me home to the farm about 3 months after my accident. As he lifted me out of the car and put me in my wheelchair, I prayed that he wouldn't feel compelled to follow through with the bragging he had done. His attempt at showing off to the little bevy of nurses that had followed us down the hall as I was leaving the Glenrose. Are you set up for Holly to get into your farmhouse in her wheelchair? They had quizzed him. His booming Showtime laugh, ha ha ha, followed by an equally loud exclamation, I'll just toss her over my shoulder and pack her up the stairs. She only weighs 90 pounds now. I won't even notice her. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Stunned, my escort of nurses into silence as they cringed at the thought of my shattered body being tossed roughly around. When we pulled into the yard and that day, after a 6-hour drive, I had been fully prepared for Sandy to follow through on his words and pack me up the stairs. But I had the pleasant surprise of seeing that with the help of friends, he had rigged a makeshift wheelchair lift to help me up into the house. Maddie and Jason stood silently watching from a distance. "Get your mother's stuff," Sandy bellowed, jolting them into action. Worse than any of my physical injuries was the mind-chilling look of fear, fear and suspicion I saw on their faces that day. They were afraid. Afraid of me? Afraid of Sandy? Afraid. And I couldn't protect them anymore. Despite the relentless grinding down and deliberate physical and mental oppression my sons lived with from their father for nearly a decade after my accident, by 2004, Matty was flourishing and loved his life as a farrier. He followed the seasonal truck wagon race circuit and shod racehorses or backyard ponies in the off-season. It was a lifestyle he had been born and raised into, and he thrived at it. Meanwhile, Jason was diligently and purposefully educating himself. After graduating high school, he took courses on information technology and systems management, all while working full-time and living on his own in Edmonton. I had resigned myself to accepting my lot in life with my husband, who by this time I had no respect or fondness for. We were like two roommates who didn't even like each other. But as always, we could work very well together for the good of our business. By that stage of the game, my goal was to maintain the most stable life possible. I got plenty of personal fulfillment and joy from everything else in my world, and Sandy seemed to be less volatile with the boys gone and just the two of us at home. I felt comfortable knowing that my sons were growing men who were going to be just fine on their own. Then, just a few days after he turned 21, in January 2004, Matty was in a car accident that nearly killed him. It left him physically and mentally disabled. Suddenly, he was vulnerable and back under his father's thumb. Once again, the grueling day-to-day task of being the target of humiliation and manipulation from his father was Matty's plight. Only this time he was even more defenseless than he'd been when he was an aware, intelligent child or a young man who could distance himself from the lunacy of his father's behavior. This time he could not escape mentally or physically. Until next time.